Work-Life Balancing Act. So should be an interesting presentation. We wanted to thank our sponsors. We have 3 sponsors for our series. DLCC Consulting Services, Diane Camacho, LawPay, and Thomson Reuters. So if you have the opportunity to use any of our sponsors, we would appreciate it. And we also want to remind everybody that the MCLE Spectacular is still happening this year. It's 3 days in November from the 18th to the 20th, but it will be fully remote and on Zoom this year. So we hope that everybody can attend. We've got some amazing speakers and topics coming up. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David Erb and our presenters tonight, and I wish them well.
Great, thank you, David Pearson, and thank you everyone for attending tonight our program. I'd like to start by introducing our 2 panelists. Our first panelist is the Honorable Judge Wendy McGuire Coates. Judge Coates was appointed to the Contra Costa County Superior Court in 2018 by Governor Brown. She received her Bachelor's of Science from the University of Missouri and her law degree from Pepperdine University School of Law in 2005. Judge Coates was a law clerk for the Honorable Ronald S.W. Liu at the U.S. District Court. She was an associate at Howry LLP from 2006 to 2009. Subsequent to that, she was a partner at McGuire Coates LLP until 2016, prior to her appointment as a partner and appellate counsel at Fisher and Phillips LLP. Judge Coates lives in Alamo with her husband, Dan Coates, and she has a daughter who's Hermione. And how old's Hermione?
She is 11 turning 12.
11 turning 12, great.
So, tween years in full swing.
Good, and our next panelist is Oliver Greenwood. He is our 85th president of the Contra Costa County Bar Association. Oliver was born at the Travis Air Force Base. He joined the Marines after high school and served as a machine gunner in Somalia between 1991 and 95. He's a graduate of UC Berkeley with a degree in history. While going to school at UC Berkeley and subsequently Golden Gate University for his law degree, he worked as a magician to help pay for the bills. Oliver's practice focuses primarily on probate matters related to conservatorships, limited conservatorships, guardianships, special needs trusts, and elder and financial abuse. He's frequently referred court-appointed cases in both guardianship and conservatorships. He's on the probate and mental health advisory committees, as well as a CEB author. Oliver's married and lives in Pleasant Hill with his wife, Ann, and 3 teenage children, Olivia, Gus, and Lex. He's the head commissioner and board member of the Pleasant Hill Baseball Association, a coach for CYO basketball, and a referee for soccer and umpire for youth softball and baseball leagues. So he's got a lot to tell us about work-life balance. And my name is David Erb. I'm a partner at Flicker, Kerin, Kruger, and Bissada. I'm a family law attorney. I'm a past president of the family law section of the Bar Association. I'm a current board member of the Bar Association, and I live in Oakland right now with my wife, Justine, and my 10-month-old daughter, Callie. So we're really excited about this program. Normally this would be an in-person program, and it's supposed to be a roundtable discussion. It's a little bit harder to have the audience participate via Zoom, but people are very familiar with it now. We've got the chat bar, so please, if you have questions while we're talking, interject them and we'll try to get them in. So for the first question to start off the night, I think we want to talk about how do you define work-life balance? You know, what boxes do you put that in? What's your philosophy? Kind of where's the starting roadmap on that issue? Judge Coates, did you want to start us off?
Sure. Well, I think you probably, if you've read anything about work-life balance, at some point people say there's no such thing, and balancing what, that it's just kind of really living life and getting all of the different buckets that you have in your life. And so for me, it's about having decided kind of in advance as much as possible with some intentionality of what kind of life do you want to be living? Whether it's what kind of relationship do you want to have with a significant other or your friends, organizations you want to be involved with, both professionally or externally outside of the profession, and really kind of having that sense of what does a full life look like for you? And that might change in different stages. It also might change based on how your interests change through that process as well. And so what's hard is I don't think I can define what that balance is as much as I know that I'm at my highest and best and happiest when the different things that I find most important, that those needs are being met. So whether that's my relationship with my spouse and my daughter, being able to exercise so that my body is healthy and that my mind is clear, and that I have time to read for pleasure, for me is an enormous thing that I carve out a lot of time for. And so kind of knowing that so that your decisions that you're making are as best as possible, maximizing your time to do those things that are most important to you. And so having identified what those most important things are.
Good. Oliver?
So I always look at it well, from the standpoint of I see the balance when I'm out of balance. And when I came to the practice of law, it was a whirlwind because I didn't know how to balance it all. I came into the practice of law. I was married and I had a child, and so I already knew a little bit about chaos and how that looked, and so couple that with the practice of law. It presented some new challenges because it's really the practice of law can be a whirlwind. Mm-hmm. And so what I found is that I had to, as Judge Coates was saying, I really had to carve out balance. I had to figure out what was going to work for me, and that's how I started to sort it out, and I had to start prioritizing what was going to be important in my life. And I love that Judge Coates mentioned reading, because that's one thing that I've really found that I enjoy, because that ends up just being some me time that that nobody can take away from me. And so that's one of those that I carve out, and I do early in the morning around 6 a.m. I'll spend some time just reading, and then I'll do it really late in the evening as well, because I carve those things out at special times when I'm not interfering with family time. So it's I balance it out, just prioritizing what's going to be important. So the reading time, it's going to be separate. It's going to be me time, but it's not going to interfere with other components of my life, like my family, and because the family is going to be overriding. But I have to be careful, because I don't want to hide out in the office and avoid the family and say, well, I'm working so I can support the family and give them the quality of life that I feel they deserve, and then just spend so much time here that I'm avoiding them altogether. So that's where I have to always be cautious, and that's where having a spouse is really good, because she is good about calling me and saying, where are you? How come you're not here? And then I'll say, well, what are you talking? Oh, yes, that's so that's where that balance comes into play, is that sometimes I don't see where the line of balance comes in, and I need to have someone else help me out with it. So my philosophy is that I can't figure it all out on my own, that I need an assist. And so having somebody else in my life to do that really helps out. And the kids, teenagers, nature's little truth sayers, they're about as good as it gets too. Especially when they were smaller, they would say things like, where are you? And that's when you know that you're kind of missing the balancing there too. So, and we'll get in more into that, I'm sure.
Good. Well, I agree with both of you. I think that the definition of work-life balance is really unique to each person, and it's really sitting down and talking about what we're really talking about is what's your priority. I think to a certain extent, you know, I'm a family law litigation attorney, and so I don't have 100% control of my schedule and my calendar. Like if a settlement conference goes late or I've got trial coming up, you know, I don't have the ability to cut it off and say, hey, I need to put my family first. And so I think first, you know, and foremost, accepting to a certain extent, it's out of my control, but also what I thought was very important for my career is this idea of there's different stages in your life and the work-life balance is going to change. The equation is going to change depending on the different stages. And I, you know, before I was married, before I had kids, now is the time where I can focus more time on work or networking, business development, board work. And that way, when I have a family now, I can focus more time on my family. So kind of being intentional on understanding that the different flow of work-life balance through your career. So I guess the big question for people who sell their time, lawyers, is there such thing as work-life balance in the legal profession, or is that just a myth?
No, I'll jump on that one. I think it absolutely is. I mean, one, time is finite. I mean, none of us have more time actually than the other. Like we're all equally limited. And so I think it is just a question of where you want to deploy those resources. And this just, I want to touch base, Dave, on a thing that you just said about the ebb and flow of how your life may or may not change. I was very decisional about my time when I had no children. And decisional not just in where I deployed it in a business side, but that I left and would go home. I think it's really important that if you are on the panel and you are single or don't have children, that's not a situation that says that your life balance should be sacrificed because those who do have families. It's really important that you figure out your exercise and the activities outside of work that give you pleasure. You have deep and meaningful relationships with friends outside of your work environment, and that takes time. Or outside of your professional circle, and that because some of those relationships are the relationships that are going to sustain you the most during some of your more stressful, challenging professional moments, independent of the family that kind of comes around. I think it's, when we think of building a full life, that it's not just defined as because now we are in a stage where we have children or don't have children. But I would sometimes have friends that were either not single or were single and didn't have families, and they shouldn't be carrying a burden in the work environment in a way that's different because of where their life stage is. And so really learning how to set your boundaries to say, this is how much I'm wanting and willing to work. And you're right, we're all selling time. I mean, some of the bigger firms with the billable hours, that creates a really big challenge. But the firms that have big billable hour requirements, they don't hide that. They tell their people up front, this is how much you're expected to work and bill for this kind of compensation. And then an attorney should be determining whether or not that job is in line with their life goals. And it might be a short-term one. Like, okay, I can do that for 3 years, but I'm not going to do it for 15.
Right. Oliver?
I'll just piggyback on that. What Judge Coast just finished with there is the job in line with your life goals, and that's where really someone has to look at the work-life balance and the practice of the law, regardless of whether or not somebody is single or married, has a family, doesn't have a family. That's what they need to look at, and how much time they're willing to put towards the work that they're doing. if they're willing to just throw themselves at their job. I have some friends who they put in a ton of time and just all their time, and it's really quite incredible. And I don't know how they do it. I don't know where they come up with the time to do the amount of work that they do, but they do it, and they love it, and they just are continually chasing the law. And I think that's fantastic. It's not something that I could do at that level. I do it at the balancing act that I do. And so I think it's possible for each individual, but again, it's for each individual to determine what they're willing to do and how much they're willing to do it. I love practicing law. I love doing this stuff. And there's so many different areas of law as well. And I think that's where the other part of the balance comes in. We can't just characterize each individual under one broad brush of a practice area, that everyone's going to be a litigator and they're going to devote so much, all of their time towards working on their case, because some people are just, they're doing transactional, and maybe they're doing a lot of working a lot, but maybe not nearly as much, and the stress level might not be as high. So again, but they're still going to have to deal with that balance and the amount of time they're going to be putting into it. So I think that there's absolutely a way to balance the work life and the practice of law. It's not a myth. It's doable. And one of the neat areas that I practice in doing the estate planning, I get a lot of people who kind of gravitate towards just going to estate planning because they think, well, this is going to be much more comfortable. And ultimately, they see that it's a nice area of law, for one, that you talk, you hang out with people, and it's kind of delightful. Oh, you're talking death, but it's as delightful as death is to talk about. But it's nice because you can't have set hours, and you've got. But really, it's transactional work, and so there are nice areas of law where you can really balance things out and have regular hours. So it's, if you look for it, it's easy enough that you can find that balance. Not a myth.
I often find that when I'm meeting with lawyers who are maybe 3 to 5 years into their practice, and if they're really, really unhappy, and there's a sense of, well, I'm just going to quit practicing law because I'm so unhappy with, usually it's like the lack of work-life balance, but it's what I think, Oliver, you described as kind of being out of balance. They're missing other parts of their life that they feel are really important. And this feeling that they just have to bail on law. And being able to sit with people and say, well, wait a minute, you might be in the wrong job for what you want for the rest of your life. Or how you'd like your life to look over a few days, a week, months. There have been periods of time where I've had an enormous amount of travel with jobs, but it's also that I said yes to those. I said yes to those moments to travel, and learning how to know I'm now going to start saying no to some things because I now need a break. I need that intense period to stop and pick up later. But being able to say, no, this isn't the right job for me, or no, I can't volunteer on that next committee, and not having to give an excuse. Just say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not available. Not all the justification, just because I need to be able to protect my time.
And Judge Coach, you bring up a good concept of boundaries and establishing your boundaries. And I know for myself, when I first started as a solo attorney, I would give my cell phone out and I was available always to my clients. And it was like 5 p.m. on Friday when everyone's doing their exchanges of kids, I'd start getting calls from people. And subsequent to that, I stopped giving out my cell phone. And when people come to see me, at the initial meeting, I say, look, I'll endeavor to get back to you in 24 hours. I don't guarantee it's going to be on the weekends. So if you have an emergency, call the police. And you can wait until Monday morning when I get back to you. And that was a life changer for me personally in my work-life balance. And so, you know, along with setting the boundaries, like you guys have said, hey, if you don't want 2,000 hours of billables a year, don't go work for a law firm that requires 2,000 billable hours.
Right.
But I think that a lot of people at the Bar Association are solo attorneys, I think or smaller firms. And one of the challenges you have is it's not just billable, there's more aspects, right? There's more business development, there's volunteer work with the Bar Association. And I know that you both sort of had paths like that. And so can you tell us a little bit about your career path, and then specifically what challenges did you run into in regards to work-life balance during that trajectory in your careers?
So on the two of the questions on the boundaries, and then also how that related when I had my own practice. I think, especially if you're in a small or solo and you're dealing with a lot of client management, the first thing to do is just help the client understand when they can expect to hear back from you. Not so much when they won't, but being able to say, I'm going to get back to you by Thursday at 3 p.m. And that might be that they give me a call on Monday. If what they're needing isn't needing an instantaneous response, not setting up a habit or a pattern of instantaneous responding, so that then they're going to expect it. And even if I can answer it quickly, I would oftentimes let them know when they would be getting that information. It gave me a little breathing time as far as think time to ensure what my answer was, but also it set up that habit of expectation that we're not treating everything like it's on fire. And I think sometimes that's hard if you're small and solo, because you have this feeling of, I need to make sure that client's happy, that client's happy, that client's happy. And part of that is setting an expectation of what is reasonable for them to expect to when they hear back from you. And I started that really very early on with clients, with lawyers, of letting them know when they were going to hear from me, so that there wasn't this, she hasn't responded, why hasn't she responded kind of feel. As to volunteer and kind of civic organizations or volunteer with the bar associations, I was very, very decisional about my time. I knew I didn't have time for 15 organizations, not just being members, but I just don't believe in being a member and not showing up and participating. And so I was very cognizant I wanted a local organization, and that for me was the Bar Association. I wanted a statewide organization that I was involved in. For me, that was the California Women Lawyers. And I only served in a very small role with that statewide organization on their amicus committee, because that was a skill that I had as an appellate lawyer. And then I had one national organization, and for me, that was the Council of Appellate Lawyers, which is an umbrella underneath the American Bar Association. And so I was deeply involved in those three in different ways based on my skill set. And I just felt it was more valuable to have three things that I did well and had personal relationships with, that I could go and attend and get to know people. I didn't need a laundry list of, I want to say in name only organizations that I had paid dues for, but didn't really participate in. And that allowed me, with those three, I knew when I could say yes and when I could say no, and when I should say no.
I could jump in there as far as I love the boundaries. I just want to jump back to that as well, because I love how you brought up the cell phone. I rarely ever give out my cell phone number, because I have a voice over IP for my office, and it sends me an email when I receive a call and or when somebody leaves a message. So I find that's a really nice feature, and I can review a transcript of a voicemail, and so I know who's called, and I can decide when I'm going to answer it. And so that I love that ability. It does tether me to the office, yes, but it's still nice. It gives me that control. And as far as the challenges on the career path and trying to figure that stuff out, I look back. It's all just kind of throwing everything up in the air and trying to figure it out as you go, and seeing what's going to work is how I found it, and really putting everything in its place and seeing how it works as it goes, and then rearranging it as it goes. And I love how Judge Coach talked about sticking with what you know, and getting on committees of what you know, and not overextending yourself, because a lot of us have the tendency to overextend ourselves, and that's really easy to do because there's so many meritorious causes, there's so many opportunities to help out, and I always feel that when there's a need that I should be, somebody's got to do it, and I'm always willing to step up to do it. But there's only so many hours in the day is the other downside, and I have to work, and I can only volunteer so much. But doing that with my career and putting me on the path that got me going in the career that I did was really attributed to my first law partner, Robert Kozloff. And this is just the type of law he was practicing. I got into this the old-fashioned way. I met him before I even started practicing law, and he urged me to go to law school. And it was I was thinking about getting a PhD in history, and he suggested law school, and I told him I didn't really like lawyers, and he asked me if I knew any, and I'm like, no, not really. And he said that he was a lawyer. I'm like, oh, well, okay, see, I don't really like lawyers, case in point. And but then we got chatting, and then he told me about this area of law. I'm like, well, this is kind of neat, and it's nothing I ever expected. And you can kind of do stuff that I never really knew about, and so that's what's so neat about this stuff. And I remember telling my wife about this area of law, and she's like, well, that's kind of cool. She had never heard of this stuff either, and so it was just opening up doors for us, and then I've just met so many neat people as a result, and I've just found it fascinating. It's just kind of grown and thrived. And the challenges, though, are just the growing practice in the how to handle the successes and the failures, the rise and the falls in the economy, and things of that nature, and what to do. And those are the things where you fall back and you talk to other people, and you have the strong foundation at home, and there are all those challenges that you rise to along the way that a lot of us don't like to talk about, but like 2020, for instance, this is not it's a challenging year for us all, but it's one of those where some people are looking at their career and they're thinking, well, what am I doing? And I think that it's a great time to look at those things. And but it's also a great time when you look at the balancing of it all, because I see the question about homeschooling and how that may alter the work-life balance, because a lot of people are working from home. And so that's definitely altered the landscape as far as spending time with the family and what that means to the practice of law. And so I think that's really altered the amount of time that I've spent with my family. They've seen me more in the past 6 months than they have in the past couple of years. That's for sure. Like, oh, who's this guy? Why is he here walking the dog? Did somebody hire a dog walker? Because he's usually not here during the day doing this stuff. And he's kind of bumming us out because we'd like to be playing video games right about now. But he seems to want to talk and have just bizarre conversations about stuff like that, that paper that he seems to want to read every morning. But, that's fine. So that it's neat. So it has altered all sorts of stuff as well.
I think this is a great segue with the COVID question, your remarks, Oliver. We provided an article to everyone today, and it talks about the difference between integrators and segmentors in the age of COVID. And just so we get an understanding of the definitions, an integrator is someone that tends to be comfortable performing work tasks during family time and doing family tasks during work time. And a segmentor is someone that really strives to focus on work during work hours and on family time during family time. And so, Judge Coates, are you an integrator or a segmentor, and how has COVID sort of interlaid into that and your work-life balance?
So I'm gonna, COVID, not so much for me in my new role with the court, because I'm at work full time. I'm not at home. I leave and I'm in court with hearings all day. My husband is with my daughter at home during those periods. She's also old enough where she can be by herself and work and has more tech skills as far as the virtual component. But on the integrator segment, for me, it's when I think back in private practice, I'm probably a 70% segmenter and about a 30% integrator. And I kind of split that way because even when I worked, when I wasn't back at the firm, but I worked at home, I was very intentional about where my office was. So what would have been the formal dining room in our home, that was what I built out as my office. I don't like to work in the smaller, closed with a door closed behind me kind of office space. I find that hard. So being in kind of what I call the heartbeat of the house, but everybody was gone for the most part during that period. So our dining room table was my office desk. I literally would turn off the light to that room when I was done for the day and moving on to being with my family. I worked a lot of hours, and so it wasn't unusual for me to get up before 6, begin working 5:30 to 7:30 before my daughter woke up, shift when she woke up to having all of that morning time before school, getting her to school, going to work, doing work, coming home, being with my family during that period of time. And it wouldn't be unusual for my husband to be putting our daughter to bed while I went back to work sometime 8:30, 9, and oftentimes would work to 1 or 2, depending on what I was working on and needing to get done. That was usually deadline driven for me as an appellate lawyer and things that I was needing to get in and out. It wasn't every day, but I would go through stretches where I was with my family. When they were kind of down for the evening, I then shifted back to working for several hours. But on the integrator, because I didn't want to lose that time with my daughter. If I was home and she was home and we were all awake, I wanted to be able to be with her and be with my husband. On the integrator side, when we would travel, I would be out of the country or out of state, and I would be able to email back and forth and I would email on vacations because I would be able to answer a question in 10 minutes that then it was off my plate, and I felt I was actually more relaxed on vacation. Or I would work in the mornings on vacations while everyone else was still asleep, so that when I was coming back from vacation, it wasn't a heavier lift for me. And I could carve out, again, I think it goes back to that idea of carving out that time, because I would be able to do 2 hours here, an hour and a half there, especially in writing and researching briefs. And then have 5 hours of vacation with my family. Same on weekends. I would get up early weekend mornings before anyone was up and get 4 hours of work filled easily on Saturdays and Sundays.
Me,
Integrator, segmentor?
I am more of a segmentor. I like to leave it at the office and just cut and run. And when I get home, I just like to be at home. I don't, because don't get me wrong, I am the type of guy who I load up my bag and I take stuff home with me almost every single night. And I have been doing this for over 15 years. I take stuff home with me every single night, and as if I am going to do work when I get home. And I think I have on about 3 occasions actually done that. And it's funny, Oliver Bray and I used to talk about this all the time because he would do that as well. And it was one of the things that attracted us to one another, is that we had so much in common. Yeah, I noticed he was leaving work one day. He had all his stuff in his hand, and I had stuff in my hand. Like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm taking this home. Oh, okay. Are you going to do that at home? Well, I intend to, but it's probably not going to happen. And that's just the reality. But because I get home and I just kind of unwind there with my family, or just there as I walk in the door, because I want to go back to also how Judge Coates brought up, and also you did, David, as far as single people. You know, there's just that unwinding factor when you get home and you want to just leave it there at the office, that and maybe you're going to go work out, maybe you have other plans that and there's nothing wrong with that at all, but there might be tasks that you need to do. But at the same time, I realize that my workday is my workday, and if I didn't get it done there, the likelihood of me doing any type of quality work or getting things done and getting in that work mode, that mindset that I need to be in, it just doesn't happen for me when I'm at home. There's sometimes when I've been able to scan documents at home. That's more of a mindless task that I don't really consider work. It's just me putting files into a scanner, and I can do that. But you know, when it comes to actual research writing or anything of that nature, it's just no, that's not happening there. I like the family time, and one thing that I want to just throw out there, because that I absolutely love, and I had written it down, and I don't want it to get lost, that it was something that I heard years ago from, and it's about spending time with the family. And I was listening to a lecture from Chief Justice Roberts, and he had asked then Chief Justice Rehnquist how he spends time, how should he work on spending time with his kids? How do you balance the practice of law and your family? And he said, Chief Justice Rehnquist said, if you want to spend time with your young children, you have to do it while they're young. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, okay. And he said the same thing. Like, oh, okay. That's because that's exactly it. There's no other time to spend time with your young children. You're not going to get that time back. Mm-hmm. And so that hit me. When I walk in the door, my young children they're my young children that time. It's not going to happen any other time. So, and that's why my resume as far as volunteer activities is so extreme with sports stuff, because I know that this is the only opportunity I got. They're not going to be around and doing that stuff for much longer, and so I need to pack in as much as possible, because ultimately it's not going to be there, and I need to be present as much as possible, because they just need me to be present, and I need to be present and just kind of enjoy that moment. And then so that's why the work stuff, it's nice to just leave it there, or if I do have it there, like, yeah, I know it's there. It's comforting to know that I have work. That's a nice comfort, but at the same time, it's still going to be there. The work is still there. It's not going anywhere.
And David, I'll just jump in
Yes.
To respond to Shannon's question in the chat. Exactly. It is the pattern of basically going on very little sleep is not sustainable. And it is very much being able to build in when you need to work and when you don't. And I almost think of my when I was in private practice, very similar to when I would have friends who were studying for the bar. And I'd say you always need to be able to have a place that you can go with your time. So if you start out studying for the bar, literally using all of the time you have available, you've thrown everything at it. There is no margin. There's no room for you to go when you need to be able to do more. And so really being able to build in margin in different periods of time. When I was in heavy drafting periods of time, I knew that I needed to carve out work time where I wasn't interrupted. Either I wasn't going into the office. I would often say, I mean, my office desk phone was never on my desk. It was 10 feet away at another part of my office. I rarely answer my phone during the workday because I can't get interrupted with what's going on. And if it's an emergency, the voicemail will let me know that. But usually getting the voicemail is going to let me have the information I need to actually call back or email and provide the answer that's being requested, as opposed to getting hijacked with my time. And so whether it's building in the margin in the morning or at night, building in exercise time in one or the other, carving out that travel time when we were traveling, and then carving out the components of sleep. I can't sustain for long periods of time ongoing on that little sleep, but I would also know that when I had moments where I needed to push, that I could carve out those periods of time, get that work done when it was ramping up, but also not sacrifice the 2 or 3 hours in the evening with my daughter because she wasn't going to stay young. Probably one of the biggest gifts of the job change in from private practice to the judicial component is I'm now available more to pick up my daughter in the afternoon from her afternoon activities. And so getting that car time back for me during this window of time when she's in middle school is one of the biggest gifts, almost an unexpected gift of the switch in the job dynamic. When I was commuting on BART back and forth to San Francisco, I was getting home later than when she was needed. I was never the drop-off pickup because I wasn't available. So getting that back is probably one of the, not just the silver lining, but a benefit I didn't even know that was going to come with this job change.
Yeah, some of the best moments are there in the car, just hanging out.
In the car.
Love it. You just sit there, you just listen, you just talk, ask some probing questions occasionally, but I think those are the best.
So one subtopic that always comes up with work-life balance is the issue of alcohol. And I know we had a discussion about this when we were planning. And so how do you view alcohol as part of your work-life balance? And how do you approach that if it is a part of it?
I'm just laughing because that is a different way you pose the question than the one we have discussed before.
How would you pose the question, Judge?
Well, no, I was just thinking, I was like, I don't know where you put alcohol in the balancing of the scales of justice. Whether she's holding that as a sword or not. But I think it more goes to that really goes to stress management. For lawyers specifically, alcohol becomes one of the self-medicating choices. If we were doctors, we would be talking about prescription drugs and some other things, just industry-wide. But it really comes to what is and how have you built in stress management added to your health, not just stress management, because the nature of our industry is one of carrying other people's stresses, not just our own. The questions that we often wrestle with and then the time pressures that we navigate have us holding the stressors and helping others navigate those stressors. And it is very much the put your oxygen mask on first situation that you and me, and especially as lawyers, we're in no real position to help others if we haven't figured out how to help ourselves. It's why going on zero sleep for long stretches is not sustainable nor healthy. And being able to, I am a yoga person. I'm a 6 a.m. yoga person because I like with Oliver on the end of the day, I'm carrying the bag of work that he's not going to do. If I have an exercise in the evening, I will drive right past that location and get home because that's just not effective for me. But having that other outlet too, as a reader for me, is an enormous unwinding, de-stressing activity that helps keep me sane. One of the things that I was really aware of as a member of the Bar Association is how often alcohol is present. And sometimes it's present at things that you just wouldn't even necessarily expect. It's like, well, we have this really not so interesting committee meeting that we have to, get through for an hour and a half. But if there's wine, suddenly that boring meeting became less boring. And so realizing how often alcohol is offered, and that no one, I don't think, sets out with the intention of having a problem with alcohol 5 years later. It's not typically a goal that was set. It's a pattern that gets fallen into. And so in twofold, managing the stressors in a way that is healthy for you, however that is, and then being decisional with the kind of consumption components. Dan and I do a kind of every other year, this kick the tires 100 days without alcohol. And it's April 11th, typically. I think that's the 100th day. And as a way to really kind of check in with ourselves from a healthy standpoint, and kind of being in that self-awareness, it's no surprise why our industry has part of the MCLE required every year has to deal with drug and alcohol abuse as a recognition that we're looking out for ourselves and we're looking out for others as well.
I am a big fan of wellness and in the legal profession, and I think there's so much that we can do for ourselves, and just getting outside when it's not clogged with smoke is wonderful. I walk my dog every day at about 5:30 in the morning, and the air quality is a little bit better than these days, but it's great most days just in general. Because I need to get out and clear my head and just do some form of exercise as well, and those little things. And I'm a big fan of meditation as well. And it doesn't take much to do meditation or things like that, just to kind of center yourselves. And there's apps that you can do. You can do it in a minute, 2 minutes, just some deep breaths, just some breathing exercises are fantastic. There's little things that can be done that are really, really helpful. When it comes to the alcohol, and I love how Judge Coates put it, as far as it's everywhere. I myself, I haven't drank in a little over 27 years. And so it's, or 26 years, pardon me, coming up on 27 years. I host the other bar meetings at my office, and that's for attorneys and people in the legal profession who have issues with alcohol or other substances. And anyone is welcome to come and attend and check it out at any time. It's on the schedule, so please do. And we'd love to have you. It is we are hosting meetings on Zoom these days, as they are throughout the state of California. And it's confidential. We don't talk about anybody that we see there because, frankly, we don't care who is showing up. You're not that important to us. That's one of the neat things about it. It's really about helping other people. That's one of the great things about, and that's what I found is helpful there, is that there's a community of individuals who are helping each other out. And that's where some people just kind of miss out. And I feel I have that additional support that others do not. And it's a little bit of a cheat, I know, but having the support system that's built into my life like that, and it's fantastic. So it helps out to be able to, and so it's the opposite. People use alcohol to cope with stress, and I do the exact opposite. I have a support system to who do not use alcohol to cope with stress, and I absolutely love it. And so there's other alternatives out there, and what I found is that it's way less expensive to go my route than it is the other route as well, and far less problematic too. And people tend not to get arrested when they're not drinking, and so it's just Judge Coates can probably attest to that.
I think that's a fair observation.
Yeah, probably far fewer people appear when in front of you that have not been under the influence in some form of the other. Just everything related to it. And I would, a lot of people that I've met who have had issues with the state bar, it's been alcohol or substance abuse related. So these problems they happen. And it builds up with that stress as well. So, finding some sort of release from that is going to be much more beneficial, be it meditating, exercising, any other eating right, doing whatever it is that you're going to find beneficial, talking with friends, socially distancing with friends. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Hopefully we get through this eventually. But doing any of those things, it's really going to help you out. But again, attending other bar meetings is a good one. So I'm not sure we can apply this to substance abuse credit just yet. Probably haven't talked long enough on it.
Maybe in the future, though. Well, on the topic of on stress, for me personally, exercise is a big outlet. Obviously, during COVID, it's a little bit difficult because you can't get into the gym. But one of the things that I try to do to be really efficient with my time, this is kind of out there, but if I'm networking with someone, if I find out they like exercise and fitness, I might say, hey, let's go, do a hike or something. And it's kind of two birds, one stone. And I think that, if you're ever able to find shared interests with people, it really helps build a better connection. It makes you more efficient with your time and helpful with work-life balance. And the other thing is, being a family law attorney, I'm around conflict all day long in my professional life. I make a very intentional decision to have as little conflict outside of my professional life as possible. And so anything that resembles conflict outside, I really try to eliminate. And luckily I have a very nice wife, and so we're conflict free. So we've kind of hit the hour mark. Before we wrap up, I think I just want you each to, if you could talk to your younger self and just for a minute or two, what would your advice be to your younger self as far as work-life balance goes?
Well, I often give this advice. I think, and I took it myself. So I give it to others, but I took it myself, and I kind of still do. I think sometimes we care about what other people think, and we care too much about the wrong people. And so I say, pick your holiday. If you were going to send some type of holiday card to a group of people, and understanding that that's giving you a narrower list. When I'm making choices about where my time is going, or a career move, or a decision, and I'm taking into account a much smaller group of people, and it's those people that are on that list for me, because those are the people that I've got relationships with, that I'm investing in, hoping to invest in future. I want to be able to maintain those friendships, and both family, not just with my spouse and my child, but with family members, extended family members, and friends. That's who I'm really worrying about, what they're thinking about me. Sometimes I'm not as worried about my supervisor. When I was at the firm, I remember one time saying to a supervisor, I'm not really incentivized by the bonus structure, because when I met a certain threshold, there was then like a next threshold to keep going. I said, I'm not incentivized by that, because I'd like to go home and see my family. I'd like to go to the gym. I'd like to be able to have lunches and Saturday afternoons hiking with friends. And so for me, the carrot, or even sometimes the stick of we want you to do more, was asking me to sacrifice things that for me were just way too important. And so I was lucky that I knew my husband. I built a life with him for several years, and we had really defined what a healthy, happy life looked like for us together. And so it's kind of really knowing who's going to help inform you of what those priorities are, and then who's going to help keep you accountable to those priorities. And oftentimes the people outside that smaller list, they're self-interested in where they're wanting your time and your priorities to go, not about what's in the best interest of you and your family and the personal relationships you'd like to keep strong.
Me?
Yes, all
Okay. Self. Hi. Get that three-way mirror. Learn to cut your hair. It's going to save you a lot of money. It's going to be really helpful, and you're going to do it at home. It's going to amuse the heck out of everyone. And it's going to be a skill that you're going to cherish once the pandemic hits. Leave work half an hour earlier than you think you should. Your family is going to appreciate that, because you're always wrong when you say that you're going to leave when you think you're going to leave. You're usually later than you think you're going to be, especially when sports are not in session. You seem to do okay when sports are going. You probably don't need those new suits just yet. You can hold off. They're going to last a little bit longer, but your shoes do need to be changed a little bit sooner. I'm good.
good. Well, Judge Coates and Oliver, I want to thank you both for this discussion today. This is very informative and fun. I like how it's an alternative to something more legal. And for our attendees, if your work-life balance is out of whack and you're thinking about leaving the practice of law, we have a program in October, on October 14th, about the alternative practices to law. So for people that have a law degree that want to explore other areas, and it's a two-part program. There's one in October and there's another one in November, on November 10th. So we hope that you guys can attend that as well. And thank you, Ann Wolf, for doing such a great job putting on all of the presentations. We look forward to seeing everyone again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us. Thanks, David.
David,
Thanks, Judge Coates.
have a good one. Thank you.
Yes,
Good to
thank
see
you.
your